Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cherokee 5208 Whiskey. I have a complete engine failure.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, roger. You got Savannah in sight?
Yeah, I'm not going to make it.
That's a student pilot who's flying solo, and even though he's right next to the airport, he ends up crash landing in the river, possibly because of something that the tower controller did without even realizing it. Let's find out in this video.
Savannah Tower, Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, student solo. Left base for runway 1.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, Savannah Tower, runway 1, 50 land.
Go to land, runway 10 Whiskey.
Alright, you might have noticed that he included student solo in his radio calls because that's something that he's required to do, and that way the tower controller and other aircraft know he's not a fully licensed pilot. It's kind of like seeing those stickers on the back of the car where it says "Have patience, student driver." So by him including student solo in his call sign, the tower controller and other pilots know this guy's still learning to fly. In order to get a private pilot certificate, you need to have at least 40 hours of flight time. 20 of those are going to be with an instructor, and 10 hours of that will be flying solo. Now, when you're flying with an instructor, you're going to get training on all kinds of things, including on what you do if you lose an engine. But most students don't ever expect that to happen in real life, and they especially don't expect it to happen when they're flying solo. However, that's the exact scenario that this student found himself in when he was on a solo flight in the traffic pattern at Savannah Airport in Georgia. Now, he said he was left base for runway 1. So when you're flying around the airfield and just practicing your landings, if you're in a left-hand pattern, all of your turns will be to the left, and a right-hand pattern, all of your turns will be to the right. As a pilot, you need to report your position in the pattern. That way other airplanes in the tower know where you are, and this is probably one of the tougher things to do when you're just learning to fly. And that's because pilots are having to listen in to what's being said on the radio, and then you kind of have to build a mental picture of where all the other planes are and know what's going on, so that way everybody can stay deconflicted. And right now, things are going pretty well for the student pilot. He's 90 degrees out to the runway, and he's about to land on runway 1. But this is where things start to go wrong. Check out what happens next.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, Savannah Tower, runway 1, 50 land.
Go to land, runway 10 Whiskey.
Left downwind for runway 28, traffic on a 3.5 mile final for runway 28 to G4.
You want me to go around 0 Whiskey?
0 Whiskey, negative, turn right, entering a left downwind for runway 28.
Downwind 28, 0 Whiskey.
So just to give you an overview of the Savannah Airport, you've got two runways that cross each other, and because the winds are light, Tower is allowing aircraft to use both runway 1 and runway 28. Now the problem with this is that sometimes planes can be getting ready to land at the same time on both runways, and the tower controller has to keep those planes safely deconflicted. And this brings up something that you don't see a lot for airliners at major airports, but it's a concept known as LASSO. Now that's an acronym that stands for Land and Hold Short Operations. Now in the case of Savannah, you can see on the airfield diagram that there are lasso operations associated with the intersecting runways. And if we look at the details for those, it shows that if you're landing on runway 1, there's just over 4,000 feet available to land before you reach the point where you would have to hold short of runway 28. Now I'm going to explain later in the video why this is so important. But for now, the tower controller has decided that he doesn't want the student pilot to land on runway 1 because of the potential conflict with the G4. Unfortunately, this is where things start to get really confusing. So pay attention to this next series of radio calls and see if you can understand what's happening and where all these aircraft are, and then I'm going to try to break it down for you.
Number 7 Sierra Alpha, you can disregard the speed restriction. There's speed traffic in the left downwind to follow you Cherokee.
Copy, 7 Sierra Alpha. Savannah Tower, Sport Cruise 163, Sierra Charlie, right base, runway 28.
163, Sierra Charlie, Savannah Tower, continues to it.
Continue to 28, Sierra Charlie.
08 Whiskey, traffic heading to your left to follow is the Gulfstream through 600 feet. You have it in sight?
I have in sight. 08 Whiskey.
08 Whiskey, follow that traffic, runway 28 cleared, 2-way.
Runway 28 clear to land, following traffic, 08 Whiskey.
Whiskey, disregard the base turn, continue downwind. Traffic to follow now is in Cherokee on a 4 mile final.
Discontinuing base, continuing downwind, 08 Whiskey.
Okay, you see what I mean about building a mental picture of where aircraft are just based on their radio calls. And it's even more confusing when you have similar call signs on the radio. Now, in case you missed it, the G4 aircraft, his call sign is November 7 Sierra Alpha, and he's about to land. Then you have November 163 Sierra Charlie, and he's headed south right now, and he's on a right base for runway 28. And what's missing from the audio recordings is radio calls from another Cherokee aircraft whose call sign is November 73 Alpha. And that guy's on a long final for runway 28. So Tower is doing their best to try to sequence all of these guys as they're all trying to land on runway 28 at the same time. And that's why he tells the student pilot to disregard the base turn and just continue flying downwind, because now instead of following the G4, he's going to follow another Cherokee aircraft, which happens to be November 73 Alpha. Let's see how the student handles it and what the tower controller does next.
73 Alpha, stay parking.
Shelter, 7 Alpha.
73 Alpha, left turn, Charlie 1, ground point 910.
Left Charlie 1, ground point 9, 7 Alpha.
Alright, 0 Whiskey, make right 360 now, I'll call your downwind turn.
Say again, 0 Whiskey.
0 Whiskey, make right 360s, I'll call your downwind turn. Over 73 Alpha, runway 28 clear to land, hold short of runway 1 for departing traffic.
28 clear to land, we'll hold short of 1, 1873 Alpha.
Now at this point, basically the controller is just giving all of these other airplanes priority over the student pilot, and he's having the student do the 360 in order to try to time the sequence to allow those other planes to land. While the student is making that turn, the tower clears November 73 Alpha to land and hold short of runway 1. So that's just like I was talking about earlier. And so far, the tower controller hasn't done anything wrong. And that's because he doesn't know that the student's engine is about to fail. So as far as he's concerned, it's just another typical day controlling aircraft in the pattern. However, there's two options that the controller might have considered that could have drastically altered the outcome for the student pilot that I'll explain later in the video. But let's see what happens next.
3 Sierra Charlie, if I didn't tell you, runway 28 clear to land, traffic will be in the left downwind to follow you, a Cherokee.
Alright, clear land 28, keep an eye out for the traffic, 3 Sierra Charlie.
Number 08 Whiskey, coming out of this 360, re-entering the downwind, report entering.
Entering the downwind now, 0 Whiskey.
November 08 Whiskey, enter a base for 28.
Turning base for 28, 0 Whiskey.
Number 3 Sierra Charlie, did you already get a landing clearance for 28?
I was just about to ask, I believe I did.
Alright, 3 Sierra Charlie, you're clear to land runway 28.
Clear land 28, 3 Sierra Charlie.
Did you hear what that pilot just said? Even though November 3 Sierra Charlie had already been cleared to land, there's so much going on with the radios that even the tower wasn't sure if he had cleared them to land. So they do a great job here of cleaning that up. Unfortunately, this is right when the student's engine fails, so let's see what he does.
Number 73 Alpha, where you park?
Secretary, 73 Alpha.
November 73 Alpha, roger, left at Bravo ground, point 9.
Left on Bravo, over the ground, thank you, 73 Alpha. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, I have a complete engine failure.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, roger, you got Savannah in sight?
Yeah, I'm not going to make it.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, roger. I'm painting the river right off of here at 12 o'clock in about a half mile.
Yeah, I can put it down in the water if I have to.
First of all, the student does a great job of sounding like he's remaining calm and he's making the appropriate mayday call on the radio. One of the things that he's probably been taught is that when you're flying around in a single engine airplane, you're always trying to maintain an awareness of where you might be able to land in case you lose your engine. The good news is that the plane isn't just going to fall out of the sky. You can glide the aircraft as long as you're following the proper engine out procedures and maintaining your best glide speed. So this guy's in a Piper Cherokee, and that's about 73 knots. So if he can hold that, he should be able to glide about 2 miles for every 1,000 feet of altitude. Now, because the standard traffic pattern altitude is 1,000 feet, if you're in the traffic pattern, you should usually be within 2 miles of the runway. So all you have to do is just maneuver to align with the runway, or maybe even a taxiway if you have to in order to land the plane. Unfortunately, the problem is because the tower is trying to get all these other planes to land, the student pilot got extended on downwind and he ended up much further from the airport than he would normally be. So he's probably about right here on the map, and that means he's about 3 miles from the airport. And if you remember the movie about Sully, the United captain that landed in the Hudson River, one of the main things they focused on was why didn't he just glide it back to land at the airport?
Why didn't you attempt to return to LaGuardia?
And his response was that he just kind of looked out the window and figured he couldn't make it.
I had to rely on my experience of managing the altitude and speed of thousands of flights over 4 decades.
You're saying you didn't do any...
I eyeballed it.
Unfortunately, the student pilot doesn't have thousands of hours and decades of experience like Sully did, so he's mostly relying on luck at this point. However, the tower controller basically saves the day by telling him that the river is only a half-mile in front of him. However, remember I said at the beginning of this video that there was something the tower controller could have done that likely would have resulted in the student landing safely at the airfield. Right after the student was cleared to land on runway 1 and the tower told him to turn downwind for runway 28, what did the student say?
You want me to go around 0 Whiskey?
0 Whiskey, negative. Turn right, entering a left downwind for runway 28.
That's right. Do you want me to go around? If the tower had cleared him to go around and remain in the pattern for runway 1, the student would have flown overhead the runway at 1,000 feet, and then he would have made a left-hand turn and stayed to the east of the airfield. And he would have easily stayed within gliding distance of the runway when his engine failed. The other option is the tower controller could have cleared him to land runway 1, hold short of runway 28. But unfortunately, here's what happened instead.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, Roger. Do you see any clear landing spaces out there?
It looks like a lot of tall grass.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, Roger. I still got you loud and clear. Just stay with me and...
I'm at less than 500. I'm going to have to put it down in the water, I think.
Cherokee 5208 Whiskey, Roger. November 162 Lima, Mike, yep.
That's our Cessna 162 Lima, Mike. Switching over to you. We're looking for that aircraft in the water, though. You want us to?
All right, Cessna 162 Lima, Mike, yeah. I'm showing it right off of your right side, probably about your 1 o'clock, approaching your 3 o'clock, and probably less than a quarter mile.
Okay, yep, we got him. We're right over top of him. Okay, looks like they're upside down. But they're standing up. They're standing on the wing. So, I'm sorry, not upside down. Right side up, standing on the wing.
Somehow he's able to safely land the plane on the water and climb out on the wing and was rescued within minutes by a Coast Guard helicopter. And if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check out one of these other student pilot solo nightmare situations, and I'll see you next time on Pilot Debrief.